The Merit Council had fought and won 300 wars before humanity's first combustion engine ever sputtered to life. Their war models, driven by probability engines spanning light years, predicted outcomes with such precision that many species simply surrendered at the first sign of conflict. Victory was mathematics, it was inevitability. And so when a backwater species called humans stumbled into their observation net, the Council had not debated war, they debated classification. Threat level low, adaptability moderate, technological trajectory predictable. The assessment passed unanimously. Humanity would fold within 3 standard years of pressure, no need for direct annihilation, just a firm push, economic strangulation, microgravity manipulations, a few minor skirmishes to break morale. There was no need for overexpenditure, the algorithms said so. They always said so. On the moon of Keltareth, buried inside the Merit War Citadel, Strategos Vorlin reviewed the conflict simulation again. Even with adjusted variables, allowing for human unpredictability and psychological resistance, the model still showed collapse by year 2.2. He leaned back in his chair, scaled and bone-white, and tapped a claw against the luminar pad. "Initiate the mid-containment protocol," he commanded. 3 floors beneath him, automated fleets stirred in the darkness of dry docks older than most civilizations. Humanity, however, did not collapse. It retaliated. The ISS Valiant had been a patrol cruiser before the war, 38 crew, a relic. When the Merit cutter disabled its propulsion array and left it adrift near Saturn, the captain ordered the ship to be scuttled. The second-in-command disagreed. His name was Elias Wren, former combat engineer, dishonorably discharged for disobedience in the Laconian uprising, reinstated when the war began because Earth was desperate. He was not on any Merit registry of priority targets. He wasn't on any registry at all. Wren redirected auxiliary power, rerouted life support into a supercharged electromagnetic lance, and rammed the Valiant into the Merit scout vessel at 32% the speed of light. The wreckage fell into Neptune's orbit, but the enemy scout ship was vaporized. 3 crew survived. It should have been a tragic footnote, but when Earth broadcast the recovered audio, Wren's final speech to his crew, it became something else. "They want us to calculate chances. Screw their math, screw their logic. You want odds? Here's mine. I'd rather burn in Jupiter's storm than let these cold-blooded bastards think we'll kneel. You still with me? Then let's make them scared of humans without a plan." The Merit dismissed it as a morale stunt, but over the next 6 months, Earth's responses began to shift. They weren't just surviving, they were retaliating, in ways the algorithms hadn't accounted for. Human vessels began using decoys made from scrap freighters. Civilian engineers from Ceres converted asteroid mines into mobile kinetic weapons. Old orbital habitats, once retirement homes for Earth's aging rich, were reconfigured into fire bases. The Merit had anticipated military doctrine. They hadn't anticipated desperation. They hadn't anticipated people like Wren becoming myths before they were dead. And he wasn't dead. Not even close. Wren stood in the storm-racked valley of Arcturus IV, a place the Merit had sterilized 2 weeks earlier to smoke out resistance. Acid winds screamed across the basalt ridges. He wore a scavenged exoshell, armor plates stitched with makeshift solar mesh. His pulse rifle was a fusion of Earth tech and cannibalized Merit components, unregistered, illegal, and unstable. He preferred it that way. Behind him, the survivors of the 7th Fringe Company waited in silence. No ranks, no medals, just a handful of Earthborn, Martian, and Belter guerrillas who followed Wren because no one else gave them a way to keep fighting. Wren pointed toward the cratered horizon. A Merit relay station hummed between twin obsidian spires, sending battlefield telemetry to Fleet Command. "They see everything from that tower," Wren said. "Every heat signature, every troop movement, they call it the Eye." "We can't get close without getting fried," said a grizzled Belter named Tahir. Wren knelt and scraped a line through the ash. "Then we blind them before they blink." He held up a small black disc, half the size of a fist. "EMP charge." "Not exactly," Wren said, smirking. "I call it a tantrum grenade, made it from 2 dead drones, a reactor fragment, and a neural override node from a Merit pilot." "That won't work." "It's not supposed to." They launched their assault that night not for victory, but for attention. Wren led the charge, sprinting headlong through the valley with no cover, hurling the tantrum grenade into the relay's central uplink. It didn't disable the Eye. It convinced it that the humans had already won. Every signal it broadcast for 10 full minutes declared a false reality. Marrant command posts overrun, fleet carriers destroyed, ground units surrendering. By the time Central Command verified it was false, 6 more relay stations had gone dark. Wren didn't just attack the Marrant's vision, he made them question what they were seeing. On the council world of Zelvarin, Strategos Vorlin watched the simulations collapse. "This is not data deviation," said one of his adjuncts. "This is systemic disorder." Why wasn't the variable Wren accounted for? He had no strategic profile, no predictive lineage, no tactical lineage, no risk vector signature. "Correct," Vorlin said coldly. "He doesn't belong in the model because he doesn't care about the model." They watched as reports came in from the Orion front. 3 human scout ships, believed destroyed, had re-emerged from the magnetic storm of Telfar's cradle. They detonated fusion cores within Marrant fuel convoys. On the Enceladus Ridge, civilians had weaponized terraforming drills to crack Marrant supply lines. In every case, the odds had been impossible. In every case, they'd succeeded. On the edge of the Sirius containment sphere, a single human message burst through Marrant communications jamming. It repeated every 2 hours. It bore Wren's voice. "They counted the odds, we counted the reasons. Let's see which one matters more." Vorlin exhaled in silence. The probability models were failing. But not because the inputs were wrong. Because something had entered the system that wasn't measurable. Conviction. He turned to the War Council. "Begin recalibration," he said. "And prepare for unpredictability." The recalibration failed. Not because of technical error, Marrant logic cores were infallible in design, but because the framework they relied upon could not compute irrationality. The models demanded data, lineage, doctrine, hierarchy, but humans fractured that clean architecture. They didn't respond as a unified force. They responded like fire. By the second year of conflict, the Marrant fleet had deployed 82% of its reserve force across 17 sectors. Casualty ratios still favored them. Technological superiority remained uncontested, and yet strategic control was slipping sector by sector, station by station. And always behind the most unexpected reversals, one name surfaced in encrypted fragments, intercepted logs, survivor testimonies. Wren. He had no rank, no official sanction. Yet he moved between war zones like a phantom, rallying shattered companies, weaponizing terrain, and making graveyards out of staging grounds. He didn't need command, he had momentum. And worse, he was no longer alone. In the subthermal caverns of Kepler 91c, Wren crouched near a field generator's faint red glow, sweat freezing in the cold. His team, now called the Uncounted, numbered 46. Half had fought on Mars. A third were ex-cons from Jovian penal transports. The rest were anyone who refused to give in. Across the cavern, a Marrant listening post spanned a glacial ridge. It had no defenses, it didn't need them. It was hidden, camouflaged by distortion fields, blind to any species without Marrant-grade photonic analysis. Wren held a blackened shard, Marrant glass metal, etched with neural imprints. It had cost them 5 lives to get it. "This post talks to their central ledger," he said, voice hoarse. "It doesn't just monitor us, it adjusts their models in real time." "How do we take it out?" asked Ira, former resistance cell leader from Europa. "We don't," Wren replied, "we overwrite it." She stared with what? Wren's mouth curved slightly. "Us." They didn't bring explosives, they brought stories, voices, 52 hours of distorted, contradictory battle reports from across a dozen human outposts. They rerouted Marrant sensors into recursive logic traps. In effect, they didn't just blind the model, they taught it to see ghosts. The listening post imploded after 9 minutes. But by then, the damage to the Marrant network was irreversible. Strategos Vorlin stood before the prime synapse, a sphere of living data fused with sentient mineral. It quivered as contradiction overwhelmed logic. "There is no coherence," it reported. "Events are unaligned, tactical behaviors lack anchor points. Probability collapse. Statistical erosion at scale. And the root factor. Ilias Wren." Vorlin's jaw clenched. He hated saying the name, not because of what Wren had done, but because of what he meant. He was a variable born of narrative, not calculation. The prime synapse spoke again. "Authorize Cataclysm Protocol Theta." Vorlin hesitated. That protocol ends civilizations. Then begin, the synapse replied, end this one. A week later, the skies above Proxima Shard burned white. Marrant dreadnoughts opened singularity cores, collapsing orbitals into gravitic implosions. Cities evaporated. Planetary defense grids melted before they could retaliate. No declarations, no diplomacy, just silence followed by annihilation. 8 billion lives gone in a single hour. And the message was clear. Submit or vanish. For most species, that would have ended the war. But humanity responded with something the Marrant had never seen: silence. No retaliation, no transmissions, not even broadcasts of mourning. Just stillness. Until 6 days later, when Marrant Command received an encrypted pulse across every monitored channel. One sentence, repeated without source. You think fire fears being scorched. And then the signal ended. On the ravaged moons of Ventia, Ren emerged from the crater of a downed Marrant Command walker. Smoke and blood crusted his armor, 2 ribs were shattered, one eye half blind, his left hand was wrapped in nanofiber to hold the bones in place. But he walked, and his followers grew. They had no uniforms, no shared tongue, but they had cause. At his side, Ira spoke without ceremony. They've escalated to total war. They think that breaks us. Some might. Not enough, Ren said, not yet. He turned to the scarred horizon, satellites falling like comets, fires consuming the ridges. I don't want victory, he said. Ira frowned, then what? I want them to remember. Remember what? That when they calculated our surrender, they missed the human who didn't care about odds. He raised a hand. Launch everything. 37 kinetic payloads screamed through Marrant-controlled space. They weren't missiles. They weren't even aimed at military targets. They were data vaults ejected into orbit around neutral worlds, ancient colonies, abandoned terraforming shells. Inside each one was a record, Ren's record, and those of others like him. Testimonies, battle logs, failures, costs, names. They weren't weapons. They were declarations. The galaxy read them. And for the first time, other species hesitated, because they saw themselves in those voices. Because they'd knelt to probability once too. Now they began to wonder if they'd been wrong. And somewhere deep in the black, a new signal emerged, coded in frequencies the Marrant didn't own. It bore no alliance, no banner, just one word. Resonance. And it spread. The Marrant called it resonance contagion. It was not a fleet, it wasn't even a military protocol, it was worse, it was belief. Spread through shared data caches, intercepted broadcasts, graffiti etched into the walls of conquered outposts. The message had no clear origin anymore. Ilia's Ren had lit the match, but now 1,000 hands passed the flame. Entire species who had once submitted without firing a shot began to question the terms of their surrender. Civilizations relegated to silence, former allies of the Marrant through necessity, not loyalty, suspended tribute shipments. Even those still under control began subtle acts of defiance. A satellite reprogrammed to play human-resistant songs. A patrol station on the edge of the Laranthe cluster, transmitting coordinates of Marrant weak points into deep space. Marrant Command assumed this was an organized movement. They tried to find the central node. They deployed internal purifiers, seeded mimetic cleansers, and blacked out communication nets. It didn't stop because there was no node. The contagion was the void they had created, an emptiness that now echoed with Ren's defiance. Ren himself had not slept in 3 days. He was aboard the Seraphim, a repurposed orbital refinery now flying under zero-flag status, no allegiance, no recognition. It carried weapons the Earth Assembly hadn't even authorized, and passengers that no human government claimed. He sat in the command core, a grim halo of hollow screens flickering around him. Opposite him sat Ralak Thune, former admiral of the Krinaxi Dominion, a species who had submitted to Marrant control 70 years prior after losing 80% of their homeworlds. Why now? Ralak asked. His voice was like ice across metal. Why rise now? We've all had reasons before. Ren didn't look at him. He stared into space, into the gravity-warped window as the stars blurred by. Because they went too far, Ren said. Because this isn't just about loss anymore, it's about meaning. You speak like a prophet. No, Ren said, I speak like a man with nothing left to fear. Ralak exhaled, the sound was almost reverent. I can get you into the central spine, the Krinaxi said, the heart of their war logic, the Cardolith Vault, no one's ever breached it. Then we're going to. The Cardolith Vault was a myth to most. It lay inside the Marant core worlds, behind shield layers so thick they were mistaken for planetoids. It housed not soldiers, not weapons, but the sentient strategy engine, a living construct fed by generations of harvested battle data. It was the war. Ren's plan wasn't to destroy it, he wanted to break its mind. They came in cold, no-energy signatures, drifting on a dead comet's wake. The Seraphim released decoy anomalies into nearby systems, drawing patrols outward. Ren and a handful of uncounted infiltrators used cloaked descent pods, plunging into the vault's outer shell during a meteor shower. They landed inside a processing garden, silent rows of data fronds and pulsing nerve trees. Ren moved without hesitation, bypassing protocols with salvaged Marant code and reverse-engineered human logic bombs. The alien systems choked on paradoxes, unable to interpret human syntactics layered over command structures designed for perfect obedience. When they reached the inner core, the strategy engine awoke. And it spoke. You are not a commander. I don't need to be. You are unregistered, unqualified. You think this is about qualifications? Ren raised the core injector, a viral archive of every lost human rebellion, every failed uprising, every final message from a forgotten outpost. This is what you missed, this is what your models can't digest. You cannot win. Neither can you, Ren said, because you never understood what it means to lose and keep fighting anyway. He plunged the archive into the core. The engine convulsed. Strategos Vorlin was in orbit above Narsai when the strategy engine went silent. No forecasts, no probabilities, no predictive maps, just white noise. He stared at the blank holofeed, his breath shallow. They've infected the vault. Impossible, his adjutant whispered. But the silence remained. Varlin rose slowly. Then we are blind, he said. The war had shifted. Not in favor of humanity, not yet. But the Marant were no longer certain. And that alone changed everything. Elsewhere across scattered sectors of contested space, human fleets began to move with new coordination. Not because Ren commanded them, but because his chaos had broken the illusion of Marant inevitability. The alliance of Brekka rose from hibernation stasis to seize back 3 asteroid fortresses. The Kural tribes, long silent under Marant vassalage, unleashed generations of hoarded plasmadrakes on Marant mineral convoys. Even Marant defectors began to emerge, scholars, technicians, sub-strategists who no longer trusted the machine they had built. The war was no longer ordered. It was wild, and Ren thrived in wild. He returned to the Seraphim bloodied, his team reduced to half. Ralak Thun was gone, vaporized during the escape through an internal flux corridor. Ren sat alone in the observation bay as they slipped into dark space. Ira approached quietly, "You okay?" "No," he said, "but neither are they." She handed him a data slate. It showed planetary movements, civil uprisings, shifting loyalties. "You started something," she said. "I didn't start it," Ren said. "I just reminded them." "Of what?" "That we're not pieces on their board." Ira looked away, voice low. "You know they'll come for you now, personally." Ren didn't answer, he just stared at the distant stars. "If they want me," he said, "let them come." The Marant did not send a fleet. They sent one. A single dread entity forged from the shattered minds of their fallen strategists, encased in a shell of adaptive singularium alloy. It had no name in any language known to the galaxy. Among Marant, it was simply called the Reckoner. Where it passed, suns dimmed, subspace wept, and across every remaining Marant-controlled sector, a new directive pulsed like a heartbeat. Eliminate Ilya's Ren, eliminate the resonance, restore order. They didn't seek a victory anymore. They wanted an erasure. Ren felt the shift before the signal reached him. In the silence between jumps, in the stillness of War's Eye, there was a presence, a new pattern in the dark, not strategy, not simulation, a hunter. He stood in the Seraphim's operations deck, eyes fixed on a pulsar's rhythm stuttering across deep space sensors. The frequency was artificial, like a challenge etched into the bones of the void. Ira entered behind him, her boots soft against the mesh flooring. "We picked up energy collapse in Sector 9K, a colony that didn't even have military value. turned to plasma, no survivors, no warning. They're sending a message. They're not sending anything, Ren, they're taking, erasing. Ren turned, the scar down his temple stark in the pulsing light. Then we stop running. Ira's eyes narrowed, you're planning something. I'm planning everything, Ren replied, but they won't expect that. The Reckoner found him 3 days later in the graveyard orbit of Delphin Prime, a world long dead, its sky shattered, its surface broken by forgotten wars. Ren had chosen the location carefully. There were no civilians, no hostages. Only wreckage and echoes. He broadcast one signal as the entity closed in. No bravado, no threat. Just a line from a dead Earth poem. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The Reckoner did not speak, it moved. A spear of compressed graviton-laced energy shot toward the Seraphim. Ren countered with a full burn of stolen Marant warp cascade drives, spinning the refinery ship into a spiral that should have torn it apart. It didn't. The Seraphim had been reinforced with scavenged lattice from the Cardolith vault's inner wall. Resistant to gravity, flexible under strain, the hull held. Barely. The Reckoner closed in, but it wasn't speed Ren needed. It was time. All across the orbital graveyard, ancient hulls flickered to life. Ren's team, those who had survived Ventia, Kepler, and the raids on the vault, had spent weeks embedding old warships with makeshift cores, not to fight, to confuse. The graveyard ships broadcast hundreds of false signatures, each coded to simulate Ren's biofield, command tags, and neural frequency. The Reckoner hesitated. It wasn't designed for uncertainty. Ren launched, not at the entity but through it. His fighter, a scavenged Marant interceptor modified with human override code, dove directly into the Reckoner's projection field. He released a spike, a one-time data burst that carried the full, corrupted archive from the vault breach, every contradiction, every moment of unpredictable defiance. The Reckoner screamed, not aloud in signal. Its mind stuttered, simulations spun out of control, calculations collapsed under recursive feedback. It struck Ren's ship, tearing it open in a wave of plasma. But Ren had ejected seconds earlier. He tumbled through vacuum, drifting toward one of the derelict cruisers rigged with recovery systems. The Seraphim surged forward and unleashed its final weapon, a chain of focused dark matter charges wrapped around the Reckoner's outer shell. Not to destroy it. To seal it. In moments, the entity was trapped inside a stasis loop of imploding vectors, locked in a computational paradox of its own making. The battlefield fell silent. Ren floated in the shadow of the broken cruiser, breath ragged inside his suit. He watched as the Marant's greatest hunter ceased to be. Elsewhere in systems light-years distant, the Marant war engine trembled, the strategy engine remained dormant, command paths were severed. And now the Reckoner was gone. Strategos Vorlon stood before the Grand Assembly, only a third of its seats occupied. The others were dead, defected, or silent. We must sue for restructure, one of the surviving dignitaries said. We cannot, Vorlon replied. To acknowledge defeat would be to dismantle what we are. And to persist without logic. A long silence. Then Vorlon said, then we must evolve, as the humans did. But it was too late for consensus. The fracture began that day, a split in the Marant unity that had held for millennia. A third of their forces recalled to secure internal space. Another third hesitated. The last remained loyal, but faced enemies on all sides. Ren watched as the stars turned. He was not hailed as a hero, he refused to speak publicly, he refused rank, command, or reward. He just moved from one front to the next, a specter in the fight, a reminder. His name became a signal in itself, not a person, a threshold. Entire rebel fleets scrawled his name onto their hulls, not to honor him but to challenge themselves. What would Ren do when the odds were zero? The galaxy no longer followed probability. It followed possibility. Ira found Ren alone in a storage compartment, repairing a busted atmospheric seal. You know the war's changed, she said. We're not just reacting anymore. I know. You can stop now, someone else can carry the torch. No, Ren said quietly, because they'll come again, maybe not the Marant, but something will. Ira hesitated, then what do we call what's next? Ren looked up, not at her, through her, into what came after. We call it the rebuild, he said, and we make damn sure no one ever forgets why it happened. Because they had counted every variable. Except him.